The Last of Us has an incredible story, one that is both deeply emotional and unforgettable. But today I want to talk about one of its more haunting aspects, the clickers. Infected reach this stage roughly a year after the cordyceps take over their body, making them extremely fast and possessing strength that surpasses the average human. Perfect representation of the downfall of civilization. The design is grotesque, yet mesmerizing, a reminder of how nature always reclaims itself. Bringing this creature to life has been a lot of fun. Capturing its intricate details and disgusting fungal growths has been both entertaining and a little off-putting. I hope you enjoy. Here we are back in Bamboo Studio. As you can see, I've imported the clicker model, and I've actually imported a cylinder, which is going to create a hole in the model because we're going to use it as a keychain. As you can see, I'm printing on the A1 printer on the textured PEI build plate, and there are a few supports we're going to be using on this model, as you can see. Mostly just around the overhangs on the head and a little bit on the side of the shoulder, which is going to support creating the hole for the keychain anyway, so I don't mind. Print time's only 1 hour 4 minutes, so it's not like it's a long print. It's quite small because it is a keychain, and it's only using 5.75 grams of filament, so very viable. And this is what it looks like when it was finished printing. I think it came out really nice. I was using 0.12 millimeters for the quality, so there's hardly any layer lines, and those should all be invisible after we've painted. The only layer lines are on the bottom, which we're going to do a little bit of sanding for just to get rid of. A little bit on the chin, and also a little bit on the underside of the fungal growths. Now the model's ready for priming. I'm going to be using Rust-Oleum's surface primer, and I've just hung the model up outside, and we're going to give it a little spray. So once it's primed, this is what it looks like. I think it came out really nice, and now we're ready to move on to the painting. So for the base coat, I'm going to be using a mixture of grey and beige. This is going to create a nice fleshy colour without it looking too pink. As you can see in the reference image, the flesh of the clicker is actually quite grey. I've also added some water to the paint to reduce the streak marks that the paintbrush would otherwise make. After letting the paint dry, this is what we're left with. This came out perfect, no streak marks at all. And now we're ready to move on to the highlights. So for the highlights, I'm just going to be using beige, and I'm going to be dry brushing again. Don't know what dry brushing is. It's basically getting off most of the paint until you're left with a tiny bit on the brush. And then you just very lightly brush over the model, and it leaves a little faint marking of the paint. In this case, it is extremely subtle, but in other cases you might use dry brushing as a second layer. Moving on to the finer details of the model now, I'm going to be using some yellow ochre on a very small brush. I'm just going to be painting over all the fungal growths on the body and also the head. Now for the tips of the fungal growths, I'm going to be using some burnt sienna and crimson red, and again I'm going to be dry brushing for this process. I've tried to add a bit more of this red to the head of the clicker, as that's where the main part of the infection is. Now with the same crimson red as before, we're going to be painting the blood around the clicker's mouth. And I've also added a bit of this red between the split in the clicker's head. At this stage I did notice that the clicker's body was looking a bit too yellow, so with a bit of burnt sienna I've just gone around all of the fungal growths again, and then I used some grey to fill in the gaps between the fungal growths because he was looking a bit too bright. Then I also added a bit more burnt sienna to the head because obviously I want the head to be slightly darker than the body. So once all that was finished, this is what we were left with. I think the model came out quite nice, and now it's ready for the sealer. To seal and hold the paint in place, I'm going to be using Rust-Oleum's Crystal Clear Sealer. And once it had dried, this is what we're left with. I've already attached the keychain, as you can see. I personally think the model came out pretty nice, possibly a bit too yellow. This is the model I made while kind of testing colours and everything, and this one I thought was a bit too bright, so this time I tried to make it a bit more yellow. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer. I do still prefer the one on the right, however I feel like in between would have been even better. And that brings us to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you want me to make next, and I'll see you in the next one.